What up, YouTube muscly folks? Welcome to today's workout. This is National Big Monday, and I'm doing bench press. As you can see, I do all my torso on my bench press day. I'm on Windler 531. Less boring, boring but big. For those keeping score at home, that is a strength training program that forces you to go up in weight progressively with time. Now, that brings me to a thought that I wanted to mention. When you're new to training, right, you probably go berserk. You probably watch crazy bodybuilder videos and try and do this absurd stuff that they do that has way too much volume and way too much intensity, really to sustain, which they manage to sustain usually with performance-enhancing drugs, but probably needs a pretty similar amount of intensity and work because they're at such a low stage in their capabilities that they can't really even handle weights that can majorly injure themselves yet. Really, they need to start freaking moving and undo the inactivity that they've done with a radical change that their body is going to see as radical. And it will make it easier for them to condition themselves to do heavier or harder work. But as people train, okay, like let's say you get to the 2-year phase and you've been training at 2 years, now you might start, realizing that it's harder to make progress long enough to hurt yourself just by losing focus on one set of weight that you're easily able to handle. So that becomes a new challenge. And also so conditioned that you can't identify through feel when you've had enough. I have a big problem with that myself. I can't identify through feel when I've had enough. I can definitely work myself to injury and feel like I'm fine the entire time. That becomes a scary reality when your capabilities and your tolerance for conditioning exceed your ability to auto-regulate, kind of. And that's at the point where you have to really, that's why programs are important. When you do a program, that sort of amount of work of some kind, that's hard for a lot of people to actually limit themselves to that. A lot of people are afraid to do less volume than they do. They think if they skip, one rep of one exercise on any workout, which I see, you want to hold the line. You don't want to let yourself slip in your motivation. I don't even like the term motivation because you got to be stronger than motivation. Motivation is very hard to do. It's hard to be motivated to do anything ever. If you have to do it all the time in order to be able to do something, then that's not good enough. I mean, there's a certain point you're not motivated, to work a job and get money, but you have no choice. I mean, what are you gonna do? Not work? So that's why. Some things you just do them because you're required to, and I think you're required to do this kind of stuff or you're not going to be able to live very long, and you're not optimally being a human that's, got all its regular capabilities that it's born to have all the time. If you can't think of a reason to use physical athleticism at this particular moment, I guarantee you it'll slip up. Some point in the future you'll be like, man, I'm glad I have it. So, I mean, these I think are just sort of bare minimums that you shouldn't rely on motivation. But ultimately, when you've trained a lot longer, you begin to notice the realities that the best time and things that you do that interfere with your ability to actually make gains over time, such as injuries. When you've had injuries and tweaks that you had to work around, maybe you had to give up a whole exercise that's really important to you, like bench press or something, because of some shoulder tweak, or you had to not squat because of your back, and now you're really kind of losing out. Imagine if you had done a little bit less work or something and you've been able to do all that, those better exercises continuously for longer. You become more cognizant of that as you become stronger and more capable. And the good thing about becoming stronger and more about that too is as you're stronger and more capable, you're handling body, relative to your body weight are very significant and could cause crazy levels of force if you lose focus. So it's almost like an auto-regulation that you have to have the wisdom to unlock, and that actually you probably only need to unlock it when your conditioning is good enough that you actually need to do that. With noobs, you could probably go berserk, and it's always going to feel like you're injured, even though you're not. And honestly, you need it real bad, so get started doing something. And if intensity and stuff, if doing a Chris Gethin bodybuilding.com program where you're just pretty much greasing your tendons. I mean, you're not going to get tendonitis doing it. You're going to feel like you got tendonitis when you do anything, and you're not going to get it that easily when the weights are so light. Really your body's just going to adapt to get stronger and stronger really fast. And the conditioning, you'll be able to tolerate things like lactic acid buildup and that kind of thing. Like, I have a history of doing running track and that kind of stuff, so I've built up and lost and rebuilt up lactic acid tolerance many times. It's just like building up a tolerance to alcohol or anything else. You just expose yourself, and then you wait a few days and expose yourself again, and then wait a few days and expose yourself again, and after a while it just doesn't feel as bad anymore. So that's something you want to develop when you don't have it, as quickly as possible. And it's almost the more you tolerate, the more you're going to be able to get to. But then you reach a point where you got to focus on progression, and the reality of the world on progression is you're not going to make progress if you yourself are injured. And that becomes more important with years, and really in the long term that comes into play fairly, probably at the end of noob gains. It starts to come into play. I mean, most people don't actually make the right decisions at that time, and so they wind up, taking even longer to develop that applied wisdom. But they'll get some tweaks. They'll have to skip something. Maybe time will roll on and it'll be many months. They'll go back to that exact same exercise and they'll be worse at it. So then they gotta, take a couple extra months to rebuild their own ability to do it the same weight for the same reps. So now they've lost sometimes a year of progress. I mean, that could happen to people. It happens to people all the time. I've seen people that actually claim they're injured permanently and they don't do it ever again. Anywho, thanks for watching today's workout. I sure do appreciate all of your time. Like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.
Got it.